The night sky erupted in a dazzling display of light, momentarily turning darkness into day. Dr. Elara Vance squinted against the sudden brightness, her hand instinctively shielding her eyes. As the chief xenobiologist at NASA's Exoplanetary Research Division, she had dreamed of this moment her entire life. First contact. But as the pulsing light grew stronger and a deep, resonant hum filled the air, a chill ran down her spine. This wasn't the carefully choreographed meeting she had imagined. The massive ship appeared without warning, its sleek, obsidian surface seeming to absorb the very starlight around it. Elara stood transfixed, her breath caught in her throat as she watched the impossible unfold before her eyes. The ship hovered silently over the sprawling NASA complex, its size defying comprehension. Chaos erupted around her. Alarms blared, security personnel scrambled into position, and panicked voices filled the air. But Elara remained rooted to the spot, her scientific curiosity warring with a primal fear that clawed at her insides. A beam of shimmering energy shot down from the vessel, enveloping Elara in its ethereal glow. She felt a strange tingling sensation spread through her body, and then in the blink of an eye, the familiar surroundings of Earth vanished. Elara found herself in a vast, cavernous chamber. The walls pulsed with an otherworldly bioluminescence, casting everything in a soft, azure glow. She blinked rapidly, her mind struggling to process the sudden change in environment. The air felt different, thicker, more oxygenated, and there was a faint, sweet scent that reminded her of jasmine. "Welcome, human," a melodious voice echoed through the chamber. Elara spun around, her heart pounding in her chest. Before her stood a being of breathtaking beauty and unmistakable alien origin. The creature was tall and lithe, with skin that shimmered like polished opal. Its eyes, large and almond-shaped, were a swirling kaleidoscope of colors that seemed to change with each passing moment. "I am Zarakai, sovereign of the Luminary Empire," the alien continued, its voice resonating not just in Elara's ears, but seemingly in her very mind. "You have been chosen." Elara swallowed hard, forcing herself to stand tall despite the fear threatening to overwhelm her. "Chosen? For what purpose?" she managed to ask, her scientific training kicking in despite the surreal situation. Zarakay's lips curved into what might have been a smile, though the expression seemed somehow wrong on its alien features. "To serve as mentor and companion to my daughter, Princess Lyra. She has shown great interest in your species, and it is time for her to learn firsthand about the curiosities of the universe." The sovereign's words sent a chill down Elara's spine. She wasn't just a scientist anymore. She had become a specimen, an object of study for an alien princess. "And if I refuse?" she asked, already suspecting the answer. Zarakay's eyes flashed, the swirling colors darkening ominously. "Refusal is not an option, human. You will fulfill this role, willingly or not. The fate of your planet may very well depend on your cooperation." As if on cue, a holographic image sprang to life in the center of the chamber. Elara gasped as she recognized the familiar blue and green sphere of Earth, now dwarfed by the looming presence of the alien armada surrounding it. "Your world stands on the precipice," Zarakay continued, its voice cold and imperious. "Cooperate, and your species may yet find a place within our empire. Resist, and—" The sovereign left the threat unspoken, but the implication was clear. Elara's mind raced. She was a scientist, not a diplomat or a soldier. How could the fate of humanity rest on her shoulders? But as she looked at the image of Earth, vulnerable and exposed, she knew she had no choice. I understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do what you ask." Zarakay nodded, satisfaction evident in its alien features. "Wise decision, human. Come, let us introduce you to your new charge." As Elara followed the alien sovereign through winding corridors of living metal and pulsing light, her mind whirled with questions and fears. What did this Princess Lyra want from her? How could she protect Earth while trapped light years away from home? And most importantly, how could she turn this impossible situation to humanity's advantage? The journey through the alien ship was an assault on Ilara's senses. Corridors seemed to shift and change as they walked, defying the laws of physics as she understood them. Strange creatures scurried about their tasks, some vaguely humanoid, others so alien that her mind struggled to comprehend their forms. Finally, they arrived at an ornate doorway that seemed to be crafted from living crystal. It pulsed with an inner light, reacting to Zarakay's presence. As the door slid open with a soft chime, Ilara steeled herself for what lay beyond. The chamber they entered was a stark contrast to the utilitarian corridors they had traversed. It was a riot of color and texture, filled with objects that defied description. Some seemed to be artifacts from 100 different worlds, while others pulsed and shifted, clearly alive in some incomprehensible way. In the center of this organized chaos stood a figure that could only be Princess Lyra. She was smaller than Zarakay, her form more delicate, but there was an intensity in her gaze that made Ilara take an involuntary step back. "Father," Lyra said, her voice a musical trill that sent shivers down Ilara's spine. "Is this the human you promised me?" Zarakay nodded, gesturing towards Ilara with a graceful movement. "Indeed, my child. This is Dr. Ilara Vance, a scientist from Earth. She will be your guide to understanding humanity." Lyra's eyes, a swirling vortex of silver and gold, locked onto Ilara with an intensity that was almost painful. "Fascinating," she breathed, circling Ilara like a predator sizing up its prey. "So fragile, yet I sense great potential within you." Ilara forced herself to stand still, to meet the alien princess's gaze despite the fear churning in her gut. "I'm here to learn as much as to teach, Your Highness," she said, hoping her voice didn't betray her nervousness. Lyra's lips curled into a smile that was both beautiful and terrifying. "Oh, we shall learn much from each other, human. Your species has piqued my interest like no other. Your wars, your art, your inexplicable ability to thrive in the face of adversity, I must understand it all." Zarakay placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder, a gesture that seemed almost parental despite its alien nature. "Remember, my child, this human is not merely a curiosity to be studied. She represents a species on the brink of joining our empire or facing extinction. Treat her with care." Lyra nodded, though Ilara noticed a flash of something, rebellion, excitement, in her eyes. "Of course, father. I shall be the very model of an imperial princess." As Zarakay turned to leave, Ilara felt a moment of panic. Despite the sovereign's cold demeanor, its presence had offered some small measure of protection. Now, she would be alone with this alien princess whose motives she couldn't begin to fathom. "I leave you to your studies," Zarakay said, pausing at the doorway. "Remember, Dr. Vance, the fate of your world rests on your ability to satisfy my daughter's curiosity. Do not disappoint us." With that ominous warning, the alien sovereign departed, leaving Ilara alone with Princess Lyra. The door sealed behind Zarakay with a soft hiss, and Ilara felt as if the very air had become heavier. Lyra circled Ilara once more, her movements fluid and graceful. "Now then, my dear human," she said, her voice filled with barely contained excitement. "Where shall we begin? There's so much I want to know about your kind." Ilara took a deep breath, centering herself. She was a scientist, trained to observe and analyze even in the most extraordinary circumstances. If she was to have any hope of protecting Earth and unraveling the mysteries of this alien civilization, she would need to approach this as the ultimate research opportunity. "Perhaps," Ilara suggested, her voice steadier than she felt, "we could start with an exchange of knowledge. I'm as curious about your people as you are about mine. Maybe by understanding each other, we can find common ground." Lyra's eyes sparkled with interest. "An intriguing proposal, Dr. Vance. Very well, let us engage in this cultural exchange. But be warned, my appetite for knowledge is voracious. I will accept nothing less than total honesty and openness from you." As Lyra gestured for Elara to sit on what appeared to be a living chair that molded itself to her form, the human scientist realized she was walking a razor's edge. Every interaction, every piece of information shared, could have profound consequences for humanity's future. The first contact Elara had dreamed of her entire life had become a high-stakes game of interstellar diplomacy and survival. As Princess Lyra began her first round of probing questions, Elara steeled herself for the challenges ahead. She was no longer just a scientist. She had become humanity's unwitting ambassador to the stars. And so began Elara's strange new life aboard the alien vessel, a prisoner and teacher, a specimen and diplomat. As the ship hurtled through the cosmos, Earth grew ever more distant, but Elara knew that with every lesson, every careful revelation, she was fighting for her planet's survival. The game had begun, and the stakes could not be higher. Alien world, adjusting to a new reality. Days blended into weeks as Elara adjusted to life aboard the luminary vessel. The concept of time itself seemed fluid here, with no sun or moon to mark the passing of hours. She measured her days by interactions with Princess Lyra, each session a delicate dance of revelation and restraint. Lyra's quarters, which now served as Elara's gilded cage, were a constantly shifting landscape of alien wonders. Living sculptures pulsed with bioluminescent light, while holographic displays showed vistas from 1,000 worlds. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, a constant reminder of how far Elara was from home. "Tell me, Elara," Lyra said one day, her silver-gold eyes fixed on the human with unnerving intensity, "why does your species create art? What purpose does it serve?" Elara considered the question carefully. Every answer was a potential landmine, a chance to reveal too much or too little. "Art serves many purposes for us," she began slowly. "It's a way to express emotions, to capture beauty, to challenge ideas. Sometimes it's simply a way to bring joy or provoke thought." Lyra tilted her head, a gesture Elara had come to recognize as curiosity. "But it serves no practical function. It doesn't increase efficiency or further your species' survival." "Not directly, no," Elara admitted, "but it enriches our lives, helps us understand ourselves and each other. In a way, it does aid our survival by strengthening our cultural bonds." The alien princess's fingers danced over a control panel, and suddenly the room was filled with holographic reproductions of Earth's greatest artworks. The Mona Lisa smiled enigmatically next to Van Gogh's swirling Starry Night. Ancient cave paintings shared space with Picasso's abstract figures. "Fascinating," Lyra murmured, her eyes darting from image to image. "Such diversity, such passion. It's so unlike our own creations." Elara's scientific curiosity got the better of her. "What are luminary artworks like?" she asked, realizing this was one of the few times she had dared to ask a direct question. Lyra waved her hand, and the earth art disappeared, replaced by swirling, ever-changing patterns of light and color. They seemed to move with a life of their own, pulsing in rhythms that made Elara's head spin. "Our art is functional," Lyra explained. "It serves to optimize neural pathways, enhance cognitive function. We create beauty, but always with purpose." As Elara watched the hypnotic display, she felt a profound sense of sadness. For all their advanced technology and power, the luminaries seemed to have lost something essential, the joy of creation for its own sake. "Perhaps," Elara suggested carefully, "there's value in both approaches. Art that serves a function and art that simply is." Lyra's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Elara feared she had overstepped. But then the princess nodded slowly. "An intriguing concept. I shall have to meditate on this." As the days wore on, Elara found herself engaged in similar discussions on every aspect of human culture: music, literature, philosophy. Lyra's curiosity was indeed voracious, and Elara walked a tightrope between satisfying that curiosity and protecting humanity's vulnerabilities. But it wasn't all one-sided. With each lesson, each careful explanation, Elara gleaned precious insights into Luminary society. She learned of their rigid hierarchy, their obsession with efficiency and function, and she began to see cracks in their seemingly perfect facade. Lyra, for all her power and alien nature, was not so different from a human teenager in some ways. She chafed against the restrictions placed upon her, longed to experience the messy, chaotic reality of human existence that Elara described. One night, as Elara lay on her living bed, staring at a ceiling that shimmered with a view of unfamiliar stars, Lyra's voice startled her from her thoughts. "Elara," the princess said softly, materializing beside the bed in a way that still made the human scientist jump. "I have a request." Elara sat up slowly, her heart pounding. Lyra had never asked for anything directly before. "What is it, Your Highness?" Lyra's eyes swirled with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "I want you to show me how humans feel, not just describe emotions, but make me experience them as you do." Alarm bells rang in Elara's mind. This was dangerous territory. "I'm not sure that's possible," she said carefully. "Our physiologies are so different." "We have technology that can bridge that gap," Lyra interrupted, her voice tinged with an edge of desperation. "Neural interfaces that can translate sensory input. Please, Elara, I must understand." Elara's mind raced. This could be an opportunity to forge a deeper connection, to make Lyra truly empathize with humanity. But it was also fraught with risk. What if the princess couldn't handle the intensity of human emotions? What if this violated some luminary taboo? I'll need time to consider this," Elara said finally. "It's not a decision to be made lightly." Lyra nodded, though Elara could see the disappointment in her alien features. "Of course, but please think on it. I feel we are on the verge of a true breakthrough in understanding." As Lyra shimmered and disappeared, leaving Elara alone once more, the human scientist felt the weight of her responsibility more keenly than ever. She was no longer just fighting for Earth's survival, but potentially reshaping the future of two species. Sleep eluded Elara that night as her mind whirled with possibilities and dangers. The technology Lyra spoke of could be a powerful tool, but it could also be turned against humanity. If the Luminary could experience human emotions, could they also control them? As she finally drifted into an uneasy slumber, Elara's dreams were filled with swirling colors and alien landscapes. In them, she stood on a precipice, Earth on one side, the vast expanse of the Luminary Empire on the other. And somehow, she knew that her next decision would determine which way the scales would tip. The next morning brought a new challenge. Elara awoke to find her quarters transformed. Gone were the alien artifacts and living sculptures. Instead, she found herself in a perfect recreation of her office back on Earth. Lyra stood in the center of the room, a triumphant smile on her alien features. "Do you like it?" she asked, gesturing to the familiar surroundings. "I thought it might make you more comfortable." Elara's heart clenched at the sight of her old desk, the framed photos of family and friends, even the potted plant she could never quite keep alive. It was a bittersweet reminder of everything she had left behind. "It's remarkable," Elara managed, running her hand over the smooth wood of her desk. It felt real, solid. "How did you do this?" Lyra's eyes sparkled with pride. "We have technology that can reconstruct environments based on mental imagery. I simply extracted the relevant memories from your mind while you slept." A chill ran down Elara's spine. The casual way Lyra spoke of invading her thoughts was a stark reminder of the power imbalance between them. "I see," she said carefully. "And what is the purpose of this reconstruction?" Lyra moved closer, her movements fluid and graceful. "I thought it might help you feel more at ease as we delve deeper into our studies." And she hesitated, an almost human expression of uncertainty crossing her features. "I hoped it might make you more amenable to my request." Ah, there it was. The real reason for this elaborate display. Elara took a deep breath, centering herself. "You mean your desire to experience human emotions?" Lyra nodded eagerly. Yes, you see, I've been thinking about what you said regarding art and its importance to your species. I believe that to truly understand humanity, I must experience the full spectrum of your emotional responses. Ilara's mind raced. This was a critical moment, one that could shape the future of human-luminary relations. She needed to tread carefully. Emotions are complex, Your Highness, Ilara began, choosing her words with care. They're not something to be experienced lightly or out of context. Our emotions are shaped by our experiences, our culture, our very biology. I'm not sure it's possible to simply download them into another species. Lyra's eyes flashed with a mixture of frustration and determination. But that's precisely why I need to experience them. How can I truly understand your species without feeling what you feel? Ilara saw an opening, a chance to turn this situation to humanity's advantage. Perhaps, she suggested, we could start with something simpler. Instead of trying to experience the full range of human emotions all at once, why not begin with a single controlled experiment? Lyra's interest was piqued. What do you propose? Let's start with a basic emotion, something fundamental to the human experience, Ilara said, her scientific mind already formulating a plan. Empathy, for example, it's crucial to human social interactions and decision-making. The alien princess considered this for a moment, her silver-gold eyes swirling with thought. Empathy, yes, I've observed this trait in your species. The ability to understand and share the feelings of another. It seems inefficient, yet you place great value on it. Ilara nodded, sensing an opportunity. Exactly. It might seem inefficient from a purely logical standpoint, but empathy is what allows us to form deep connections, to work together towards common goals. It's part of what makes us human. Lyra's excitement was palpable. Very well, Dr. Vance. Let us proceed with this experiment in empathy. How shall we begin? As Ilara outlined her proposal for a controlled empathy experiment, she felt a glimmer of hope. If she could make Lyra truly understand and feel empathy, it could change everything. It might be the key to saving Earth, to forging a genuine connection between their species. But as she caught her reflection in the familiar yet alien surroundings of her reconstructed office, Ilara was reminded of the enormity of her task. She was walking a tightrope between two worlds, and one false step could spell disaster for humanity. The empathy experiment would be a turning point, Ilara realized. It would either open new doors of understanding or reveal the unbridgeable gap between human and luminary. As she began to set up the parameters for their test, Ilara silently hoped that the human capacity for empathy would prove to be the most powerful force in the universe. A dangerous game. The empathy experiment began simply enough. Ilara had designed a series of scenarios, each carefully crafted to evoke specific emotional responses. She would describe a situation and Lyra, connected to a neural interface of her own design, would attempt to experience and understand the corresponding human emotion. Let's start with something fundamental, Ilara said, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. Imagine a child, lost and alone in a crowded place. They're scared, calling out for their parents. How does that make you feel? Lyra's eyes closed, the silver-gold swirls behind her lids pulsing rapidly. I sense distress, she said slowly. A physiological response, increased heart rate, shallow breathing. But there's something else, an urge to act, to help. Is this empathy? Ilara nodded encouragingly. That's part of it, yes. Empathy allows us to understand and share the feelings of others. It often drives us to action, to help those in need. As they progressed through more complex scenarios, Ilara noticed a change in Lyra. The alien princess became more animated, her responses more nuanced. She began to ask questions not just about the emotions themselves, but about the context surrounding them. I don't understand, Lyra said after a particularly poignant scenario involving sacrifice. Why would someone willingly endure pain or loss for another? It seems illogical. Ilara smiled softly. That's the beauty of human emotion, Your Highness. It isn't always logical. Love, compassion, self-sacrifice. These are things that often defy reason but define our humanity. As the days wore on, Lyra's curiosity only grew. She began to request more intense emotional experiences, pushing the boundaries of what Elara felt comfortable sharing. "I want to feel everything," Lyra declared one day, her eyes blazing with an almost feverish light. "Joy, sorrow, anger, love. I must understand it all." Elara felt a pang of alarm. "Your Highness, emotions aren't something to be rushed into. They're powerful, sometimes overwhelming. We need to proceed cautiously." But Lyra was insistent. "You don't understand, Elara. I'm on the verge of a breakthrough. With this knowledge, I could revolutionize Luminary society. We could evolve beyond our cold logic, experience the full spectrum of existence as you humans do." The excitement in Lyra's voice sent a chill down Elara's spine. This wasn't just scientific curiosity anymore. It was becoming an obsession. And obsession, Elara knew all too well, could be dangerous. As Lyra's demands for more intense emotional experiences grew, Elara found herself walking an increasingly precarious line. She knew she needed to maintain the princess's interest to protect Earth, but she also feared the consequences of pushing too far, too fast. One night, as Elara lay awake in her reconstructed Earth bedroom, she heard a soft chime. The signal that Lyra was about to appear. The alien princess materialized, her form shimmering into existence at the foot of Elara's bed. "I've made a decision," Lyra announced, her voice tinged with an excitement that bordered on mania. "I want to experience the most powerful human emotion of all. I want to feel love." Elara sat up, alarm coursing through her. "Love isn't something you can just simulate, Your Highness. It's complex, multifaceted. It develops over time, through shared experiences and—" "Then we shall create those experiences," Lyra interrupted, her eyes swirling with determination. "Use your memory extraction technology. Let me live through your most profound moments of love. I must understand." The request sent Elara's mind reeling. To allow Lyra access to her most intimate memories, her deepest feelings, it felt like a violation, but she also saw an opportunity. If she could make Lyra truly understand love, could it change the princess's perspective on humanity? "I'll need time to prepare," Elara said carefully. "Love isn't just one emotion. It's joy and pain, excitement and fear, all wrapped up together. Are you sure you're ready for that?" Lyra nodded emphatically. "I've never been more certain of anything. This is the key, Elara. The key to understanding your species, to bridging the gap between us." As Lyra shimmered and disappeared, leaving Elara alone with her thoughts, the human scientist felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She was about to open up the most vulnerable parts of herself to an alien being who, despite their growing connection, she still didn't fully trust. The next morning, Elara found her quarters transformed once again. This time, it was an amalgamation of significant places from her past, her childhood home, her first apartment, the lake where she had shared her first kiss. Lyra stood in the center of it all, practically vibrating with anticipation. "Are you ready?" she asked, gesturing to a pair of neural interface devices floating nearby. Elara took a deep breath, steeling herself. "As ready as I'll ever be," she said, reaching for one of the devices. "But remember, Your Highness, love isn't just about the good moments. It can also bring pain, heartbreak. Are you prepared for that?" Lyra's eyes flashed with determination. "I am prepared for anything, Dr. Vance. Let us begin." As Elara placed the neural interface on her temple, she silently prayed that this experiment wouldn't be the one that finally pushed things too far. The device hummed to life, and suddenly, Elara felt herself falling into her own memories. She was 6 years old, being hugged tightly by her mother after scraping her knee. She was 16, experiencing the nervous excitement of a first date. She was 25, crying tears of joy as she received her doctorate, her parents beaming with pride. But then came the harder memories, the ache of her first heartbreak, the hollow emptiness after losing her father to cancer, the bittersweet pain of saying goodbye to her mother as she left for this very mission to study potential alien signals. Through it all, Ilara was acutely aware of Lyra's presence, experiencing these intensely personal moments alongside her. She could feel the princess's wonder, her confusion, her growing understanding. When they finally disconnected from the interface, Ilara found Lyra staring at her with an expression she had never seen before on the alien's face. There were tears, actual, glistening tears, in the princess's swirling eyes. I had no idea," Lyra whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Such joy, such pain. How do you bear it? How do you continue to open yourselves up to such potential for hurt?" Ilara smiled softly, reaching out to take Lyra's hand in a gesture that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. "Because the joy is worth the risk," she said gently. "Because connection, love, empathy, these are what make life worth living." For a long moment, Lyra was silent, processing everything she had experienced. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, softer, more uncertain. I think I understand now, Ilara, and I'm not sure I can ever go back to the way I was before." As Ilara looked into Lyra's eyes, she saw something she had never expected to see in an alien being, a reflection of her own humanity. In that moment, she realized that their experiment had changed far more than just the princess. It had altered the very fabric of their relationship and possibly the future of human-luminary relations. But as the enormity of what they had done settled over her, Ilara also felt a twinge of fear. They had opened Pandora's box, unleashing the full spectrum of human emotion into a being who had never known such intensity of feeling. What would be the consequences of their actions? And how would the rigid, logic-driven luminary society react to a princess forever changed by human emotions? As the simulated environments faded away, leaving them in the stark reality of the alien ship, Ilara knew that they had reached a turning point. The game had changed, and the stakes were higher than ever. Whatever came next would shake not just their own fates, but the destiny of two civilizations. Turning the tables. The days following the intense emotional experiment were marked by a palpable shift in the dynamic between Ilara and Princess Lyra. The alien royal seemed both invigorated and unsettled by her newfound understanding of human emotions, particularly love and empathy. Lyra's questions became more nuanced, more personal. How do humans cope with the intensity of these feelings? She asked one day, her swirling eyes fixed on Ilara with an almost desperate intensity. How do you function when your hearts are so full? Ilara considered her answer carefully. It's not always easy, she admitted. But that intensity, that fullness, it's what drives us. It fuels our creativity, our determination, our will to survive and thrive. As they continued their discussions, Ilara began to see an opportunity emerging. Lyra's newfound empathy and emotional understanding could be the key to changing the Luminary's perspective on humanity. But to leverage this, Ilara would need to be bold. "Your Highness," she said during one of their sessions, "I shared so much about humanity with you. Would you be willing to tell me more about your own people, about the challenges facing the Luminary Empire?" Lyra hesitated, conflict evident in her alien features, but the emotional bonds forged through their shared experiences seemed to win out. "We are not as perfect as we appear," she admitted softly. "Our pursuit of logic and efficiency has led us to a point of stagnation. We no longer innovate, no longer create. We simply exist." This confession was a goldmine of information, and Ilara's scientific mind raced with the implications. "Perhaps," she suggested carefully, "there's something to be learned from humanity's chaotic, emotional approach to problem-solving." Lyra's eyes lit up with interest. "What do you mean?" Ilara smiled, sensing an opening. "Well, let me give you an example. Have you ever heard of human brainstorming sessions?" Over the next few days, Ilara introduced Lyra to various human problem-solving techniques. They held mock brainstorming sessions, discussed the value of diverse perspectives, and even engaged in some simple role-playing exercises to practice empathetic decision-making. Lyra proved to be an eager student, her newfound emotional capacity allowing her to engage with these concepts in ways that would have been impossible before. But more importantly, she began to see the potential applications for her own society. Lyra said one day, her voice filled with excitement, "I think I understand now. The very chaos and emotionality that we Luminari have always seen as humanity's weakness, it's actually your greatest strength." Lyra nodded encouragingly. "In a way, yes. Our emotions drive us to innovate, to take risks, to imagine possibilities beyond the purely logical." Lyra paced the room, her form shimmering with energy. "This could be revolutionary for my people. If we could incorporate even a fraction of this creative problem-solving, this emotional intelligence." As Lyra watched the princess's excitement grow, she felt a mixture of hope and apprehension. They were on the verge of a major breakthrough, one that could reshape the relationship between their species. But she also knew that change rarely came without resistance. "Your Highness," Lyra said carefully, "have you considered how the rest of your people might react to these ideas? Particularly your father, the Emperor." Lyra's enthusiasm dimmed slightly, reality setting in. "My father, he is set in his ways. The entire Luminari hierarchy is built on our current system of logic and efficiency. To suggest a change of this magnitude, it would be met with resistance," Lyra finished for her. Lyra nodded, her expression troubled. "More than resistance, it could be seen as a threat to the very foundations of our society." Lyra took a deep breath, knowing she was about to take a huge risk. "Then perhaps," she said slowly, "we need to approach this from a different angle. Instead of trying to change your entire society at once, what if we started smaller? What if we could demonstrate the value of human creativity and emotional intelligence in a way that even the most logical Luminari couldn't deny?" Lyra's eyes swirled with curiosity. "What do you have in mind?" Lyra smiled, her scientific mind already formulating a plan. "A challenge. A problem that the Luminari have been unable to solve with their traditional methods. Something that would require the kind of lateral thinking and emotional insight that humans excel at." As Lyra outlined her idea, she could see the excitement building in Lyra's alien features. They would create a simulated crisis, perhaps a complex diplomatic situation or a scientific puzzle, and invite both Luminari experts and a team of humans to attempt to solve it. "But how can we ensure fairness?" Lyra asked. "The Luminari would have a significant technological advantage." Lyra's smile widened. "That's the beauty of it. We'll level the playing field by focusing on pure problem-solving ability. No advanced tech, no AI assistance, just minds working together to find a solution." As they hammered out the details of their plan, Lyra felt a surge of hope. This was more than just a chance to prove humanity's worth. It was an opportunity to bridge the gap between their species, to show the Luminari the value of a more balanced approach to existence. But as night fell and Lyra shimmered away to make the necessary arrangements, Lyra was left alone with her thoughts. The stakes of their little experiment had never been higher. If they succeeded, it could mean a new era of cooperation between humans and Luminari. If they failed, Lyra pushed the thought aside. Failure wasn't an option. As she lay in her bed, staring up at the simulated stars of her home galaxy, she made a silent promise. She would show the Luminari the true power of human ingenuity, the strength that came from embracing both logic and emotion. Tomorrow, the real challenge would begin, and Lyra was determined to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. The day of the challenge arrived with a palpable tension in the air. Lyra stood beside Princess Lyra in a vast chamber aboard the Luminari ship, surrounded by holographic displays and a sea of alien faces. The Luminari High Council had gathered to witness this unprecedented event, their swirling eyes fixed on the human scientist with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Emperor Zorake, sat on a levitating throne at the head of the chamber, his imperious gaze sweeping over the assembled crowd. "Daughter," he said, his voice resonating through the room, "explain to us again the purpose of this experiment." Lyra stepped forward, her posture straight and proud. "Father, esteemed members of the council, we stand at a crossroads. Our empire has achieved greatness through logic and efficiency, but we have reached a point of stagnation. Today, we will witness a demonstration of a different approach to problem-solving, one that may hold the key to our continued evolution." Ilara watched as the Emperor's eyes narrowed, sensing the underlying challenge in his daughter's words. But before he could respond, Lyra activated a holographic display in the center of the room. "Behold," she announced, "a simulation of the Nexus crisis." The hologram showed a complex star system, with multiple planets and spacecraft locked in a delicate dance of diplomacy and potential conflict. Ilara recognized it as a more elaborate version of the scenario they had designed together. A multi-layered problem involving resource allocation, diplomatic negotiations, and the threat of interstellar war. "This simulation represents a crisis that has stumped our best strategic minds for cycles," Lyra continued. "Today, we will see if a team of humans, using their unique problem-solving abilities, can find a solution where we have failed." A murmur rippled through the assembled luminary. Ilara could sense their disbelief, their certainty that no primitive humans could succeed where their advanced civilization had faltered. Emperor Zarake leaned forward on his throne. "And who will represent humanity in this challenge?" he asked, his tone dripping with skepticism. Ilara stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "I will, Your Majesty, along with a team of my fellow humans, connected virtually from Earth." The Emperor's eyes flashed. "You dare to think that you and your primitive species can outperform the finest minds of the Luminary Empire?" "Not outperform, Your Majesty," Ilara replied carefully, "but perhaps offer a different perspective, one that could complement your own approaches." Before the Emperor could respond, Lyra intervened. "Father, I propose we allow this demonstration to proceed. What harm can there be in observing their methods?" For a long moment, tension crackled in the air as father and daughter locked eyes. Finally, the Emperor gave a curt nod. "Very well, let the challenge begin." As the simulation sprang to life around them, Ilara felt a surge of determination. This was humanity's chance to prove its worth, to show that their emotional intelligence and creative thinking could solve problems that pure logic could not. For hours, Ilara and her virtual team of human experts worked feverishly, tackling the complex scenario from multiple angles. They employed brainstorming techniques, emotional role-playing to understand the motivations of different factions, and out-of-the-box thinking that often left the observing luminary baffled. Ilara could see the growing interest in the eyes of the Luminary Council as they watched the humans work. Even Emperor Zarake leaned forward on his throne, his skepticism giving way to reluctant curiosity. As the final minutes of the challenge ticked away, Ilara's team presented their solution: a complex, multifaceted approach that balanced resource distribution, diplomatic compromises, and a touch of unpredictability that kept all parties engaged and invested in maintaining peace. A hush fell over the chamber as the luminary analyzed the human solution. Ilara held her breath, acutely aware that the fate of Earth might hinge on this moment. Finally, a senior luminary strategist stepped forward, his eyes swirling with a mixture of confusion and admiration. "This solution, it defies our traditional logic. And yet, our simulations show a 98.7% chance of long-term stability. How is this possible?" Ilara smiled, feeling a surge of pride in her species. "It's possible because we approach the problem not just with logic, but with empathy, creativity, and an understanding of the emotional motivations driving each faction. We didn't just solve the immediate crisis, we created a framework for ongoing cooperation and mutual benefit." The chamber erupted in discussion, with Luminary Council members debating the implications of what they had witnessed. Ilara caught Lyra's eye across the room, seeing a glimmer of hope and excitement in the princess's alien features. But then Emperor Zarake rose from his throne, and silence fell once more. "This demonstration has been enlightening," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "However, it does not change the fundamental facts. Humanity remains a primitive, chaotic species. One successful simulation does not prove their worth to our empire." Ilara felt her heart sink, but before she could respond, Lyra stepped forward. "Father," she said, her voice ringing with a newfound confidence, "I must respectfully disagree. What we have witnessed today is not just a quirk or a fluke. It is evidence of a fundamental truth that we, in our pursuit of pure logic, have forgotten." The princess turned to address the entire council. "Emotions, creativity, the very chaos we have long dismissed as weakness, these are the sources of innovation, of growth, of true progress. We have become stagnant in our perfection, while humanity continues to evolve and adapt." A ripple of shock went through the assembled luminari at this open defiance. Emperor Zarake's eyes flashed dangerously. "Daughter, you overstep." But Lyra pressed on, her voice growing stronger. "I have studied the humans, father. I have experienced their emotions, their way of thinking. And I tell you now, there is strength in their approach that we would be fools to ignore." As Ilara watched in awe, she saw something remarkable happening. Several younger members of the Luminary Council were nodding in agreement with Lyra's words. Others looked thoughtful, reconsidering long-held beliefs. The Emperor, seeing his authority challenged for perhaps the first time in centuries, rose to his full height. "This is nonsense. We are the Luminari, the most advanced civilization in the known universe. We have no need for human emotions or their chaotic methods." But his words no longer carried the same weight. The seed of doubt had been planted, and Ilara could see it taking root in the minds of the luminari around her. Lyra turned to Ilara, her eyes shining with a very human determination. "Dr. Vance," she said, loud enough for all to hear, "I believe it's time we showed my people the full potential of human luminary cooperation. Are you ready to take the next step?" Ilara nodded, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. They were on the brink of something monumental, the potential shift in the very foundations of luminary society, and humanity's future hung in the balance. As the chamber erupted into heated debate, with factions forming and alliances shifting before her eyes, Ilara realized that their little experiment had sparked something far greater than she had ever imagined. A rebellion was brewing, not of violence, but of ideas, and she and Lyra were at the heart of it all. The game had changed, and the next moves would determine the fate of both their species. Ilara squared her shoulders, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The true test was just beginning. The aftermath of the challenge sent shockwaves through the Luminari Empire. What had begun as a simple demonstration had evolved into a full-blown ideological revolution. The Grand Chamber, once a bastion of cold logic and rigid hierarchy, had become a battleground of ideas. Emperor Zarake, his authority challenged for the first time in millennia, retreated to his private quarters, leaving the council in disarray. In the vacuum left by his absence, new factions began to emerge. Lyra, standing tall amidst the chaos, had become the de facto leader of what was quickly being called the empathy movement. Young luminari, intrigued by the potential of emotional intelligence and creative problem-solving, rallied around her. Ilara found herself at the center of a storm she had helped create. Luminari of all ranks approached her, some with skepticism, others with burning curiosity. They peppered her with questions about human culture, emotions, and decision-making processes. Dr. Vance, a young luminari scientist, asked, his eyes swirling with excitement, "Is it true that human children learn through play, through imagination?" Ilara nodded, smiling at the memory of her own childhood. "Yes, play is a crucial part of human development. It helps us learn, socialize, and develop creative thinking skills." The concept seemed to both baffle and fascinate the luminari. The idea that seemingly pointless activities could lead to growth and innovation was revolutionary to their efficiency-driven minds. As days passed, Ilara and Lyra worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between human and luminary thinking. They organized workshops, demonstrations, and even art classes, activities that were met with initial confusion but growing enthusiasm from the younger luminary. But not everyone was pleased with these developments. A conservative faction, led by some of the oldest members of the Luminary Council, viewed the spread of human ideas as a threat to their way of life. "This is madness," one elder councillor declared during a heated debate. "We cannot abandon millennia of progress for the sake of primitive human concepts like creativity and emotional intelligence." Lyra, her voice strong and clear, countered, "We are not abandoning our progress, esteemed elder. We are enhancing it. The humans have shown us that there is strength in diversity of thought, in the interplay between logic and emotion." The tension within the Empire continued to build. Ilara could sense that they were approaching a tipping point. Something had to give. That moment came sooner than anyone expected. Emperor Zarakay, emerging from his seclusion, called for a grand assembly of all luminary. As Ilara stood beside Lyra in the vast amphitheater, she could feel the weight of countless alien eyes upon her. The Emperor's voice boomed across the gathered masses. "My people, we stand at a crossroads. For eons we have prided ourselves on our logic, our efficiency, our technological superiority. And yet, a single human has managed to shake the very foundations of our society." Ilara held her breath, uncertain of where this was leading. "I have spent much time in contemplation," Zarakay continued. "I have reviewed the data from the challenge, studied the reports of the changes sweeping through our youth, and I have come to a conclusion that, by our traditional logic, seems inconceivable." The Emperor's eyes, swirling with a complexity of emotion Ilara had never seen in him before, fixed upon her. Dr. Ilara Vance stepped forward. On shaky legs, Ilara approached the towering figure of the luminary ruler. Every eye in the vast chamber was upon her. "You came to us as a prisoner, a specimen to be studied," Zarakay said, his voice carrying to every corner of the amphitheater. "But you have become something far more. A teacher, a catalyst for change." The Emperor turned to address his people. "The human concept of evolution through adversity, through the very chaos we have long sought to eliminate, has merit. We have achieved greatness, but at the cost of stagnation. It is time for the Luminary Empire to evolve once more." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Ilara could scarcely believe what she was hearing. "From this day forward," Zarakay declared, "we will embark on a new path, one that combines our logic and efficiency with the creativity and emotional intelligence of humanity. We will forge a new galactic order, not of conquest, but of cooperation and mutual growth." The Emperor's gaze returned to Ilara. "Dr. Vance, you came here to protect your world from our perceived threat. Instead, you may have saved both our civilizations from the curse of stagnation. On behalf of the Luminary Empire, I extend an offer of alliance to Earth and all of humanity." Ilara's mind reeled. This was beyond her wildest hopes. She had come here expecting to fight for humanity's survival, and instead had helped spark a revolution that could reshape the galaxy. With a deep breath, Ilara stepped forward. She was no longer just a scientist, but a representative of her entire species. "Your Majesty, on behalf of humanity, I accept your offer with gratitude and hope for our shared future." The amphitheater erupted in a cacophony of sounds: cheers, debates, exclamations of disbelief. Lyra rushed to Ilara's side, her eyes shimmering with what could only be described as joy. "We did it," the princess whispered, taking Ilara's hand in her own. "We've changed everything." As Ilara looked out over the sea of alien faces, some excited, some uncertain, but all irrevocably changed, she felt a profound sense of awe. The journey that had begun with her abduction had led to this moment, the dawn of a new era for both humanity and the Luminary. There would be challenges ahead, she knew. Integrating two vastly different civilizations would not be easy. There would be misunderstandings, conflicts, and setbacks, but there would also be growth, innovation, and a sharing of knowledge and culture on a scale never before seen in the galaxy. As the assembly dissolved into excited discussion and planning, Ilara found a quiet moment to look up at the stars visible through the amphitheater's transparent dome. Somewhere out there was Earth, the home she'd have fought so hard to protect. She had succeeded beyond her wildest dreams, not through force or cunning, but through the very qualities that made humanity unique: empathy, creativity, and the ability to forge connections even in the most unlikely circumstances. The future stretched out before her, a vast canvas of possibilities. Humanity had taken its first real steps into the galactic community, not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners and innovators. And Ilara, once a prisoner on an alien ship, now stood at the forefront of this new frontier. As Lyra gently tugged her hand, leading her towards a group of eager young luminary scientists, Ilara smiled. The real work was just beginning, and she couldn't wait to see what wonders this new human luminary alliance would create. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter that night, as if in approval of the new path forged by two species who had found strength in their differences and hope in their shared future.